So, guys, welcome to another episode of All Things Football. And today we sit in a football heaven with a legendary guest among our midst. And now we're all getting old and long in the tooth. But when we began watching football, we basked in the ambience of the goalkeeping glory and of the agility of players like Brian Baloy, William Zokpara, John Tlale, and the reassuring presence of Mark Anderson. And among them, there was a young man sporting a moustache that will make 80s Graham Souness very proud. And he also helped pave the way for goalkeepers like Munib Josephs and Itu Melenkuni, stalwarts in South African football. Joining me today, I've got Sajid and Imraan to welcome the brilliant, the iconic South African hero, Andre Arendse. Andre, welcome to the show. And except for the fact that you are a Liverpool fan, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on.
It is my pleasure. I had a quick look at some of your guys' work, and I was very impressed. I think it's such a great platform just to talk all things football, and that's what we like doing. If I'm not in studio doing it, I'm on the training ground doing it, or when I'm chatting with friends, we're doing it. Whether it's about local football, or whether it's about the football around the world. That's what we love doing. We love chatting football, and so thank you guys for this platform. I'm looking forward to it.
The pleasure is all ours. So just to kick it off, Andre, of course, it's been a very fruitful and successful road for you. We followed your career, but how and when did it all get started, and when did you realize that you'd make a living out of playing professional football? And let's just reminisce a bit on some of the good old days when you started with Cape Town Spurs. And if you can maybe also just touch on the old and the PS and how that.
Yeah, I mean, geez, Riaz, you're going to take me down memory lane a little bit now, but I think when we look at it from that perspective, it'll also give you an idea of how the game's evolved. Because you're talking almost two different eras, or maybe more different eras of football, which goes back to those days. And I think for starters, what we've got to remember that back in those days, football was not a full-time professional sport. So no one made a living from the game back in those days. In fact, I remember when I was playing for Bafana during the Nations Cup in 1996. I was an employee at Old Mutual at the time. So that gives you an indication of how semi-professional it was. That back then we had to have a day job as well. But if I take you slightly further back than that, I pretty much grew up in an era where there was nothing to aspire to. Except having the passion to play football, whether it's on the streets of Salt River as I did in Cape Town, or whether it was on the playing fields at club level. We had the passion for it, and there was no national team back then. The NSL back in those days was well supported, and that was the platform, pretty much. But there wasn't any sort of hard and fast rule or way that you were going to become a professional footballer back then, because there were no development structures. It was all for the fun of it. So the game was played for the fun of it, and because we had the passion for it, that in itself helped you excel in the game. So, and that's the one thing I totally wish that I had back then, was proper coaching. Development coaching. So coaching that taught you technique, coaching that taught you how to play in formations, coaching that taught you how to have a tactical approach to a game back in those days. And that was always the missing link for us.
And working from the back as well.
That's it. I mean, you see the different football philosophies that coaches adopt these days, whether it's playing out from the back or, that type of thing. And we never had that. But it worked. Back in the day, it worked, and it brought the passion out of the game for you. And so, just to put you in the picture quickly, I think it's safe to say that every single goalkeeper out there will tell you that they were once a striker and they were rubbish at being a striker, and so they went and played in the goals. I'm no different. I'm a lucky one. I consider myself a lucky one in the sense that I loved it, and it created a career for me. And so it was literally by mistake. I remember back in the day I was playing for a team called FNB Rangers back in the day, based at Malta Park in Observatory in Cape Town, and I just started messing around in goals before training session, and my coach said to me, "You're not too bad at that, eh? I wish you would have been honest with me and said you're a crap striker, rather than say you're not too bad at being a goalkeeper." And he said, "Listen, come and have a go in one of the games on the weekend." That's how fun and semi-professional it was. And I said, "Sure, no problem."
Okay.
And I absolutely loved it. And that was pretty much the starting point for me to progress through the years.
Lovely. You and Imraan have another thing in common besides supporting Liverpool. He's also an old mutual employee, so I don't like that.
I still am. Yes. Working for the
Yeah.
Listen, we got to look up our family history, buddy.
You mentioned the passion in the game that you had back in the day, and it reminded me so much. I was a youngster. I might look a little bit young now, but I was a real youngster back then, watching you in the goalpost and thinking, wow, we have a real talent, and the whole idea was to build a solid team so we could compete, and that's what we had back then in the 1996 AFCON winning team that you were a part of. That winning team you played a part of, and then in 1998 you were selected to go to the World Cup, and then I believe an injury, you were forced out because of injury, and then in 2002 you played in the World Cup, so you had quite quite an interesting career. Would you be able to talk us a little bit through what that was like, the highs and the lows? Playing in the 2002 World Cup coming up against the likes of Spain, playing against players like Raul. What was that like for you? Because watching it on television from where I was, I could see no difference. The Bafana Bafana then was super strong.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that I love talking about, but also. On the negative side, it's something that will haunt me, and has haunted me for a long time, and then we'll come to that Spain game in a second. But just backtracking a little bit to 96, and to give you an example of how the game has progressed from a mental, psychological perspective from back then as to now, and how being strong-minded is not something that you can be coached on a training ground or something like that. It's got to be ingrained. You must be born with it practically, because and more specifically from a goalkeeping perspective, I think one of your key traits has got to be strength of mind, because I always say when you look at any setup in any starting 11, you've got your strikers who's backed up by midfielders, who's backed up by defenders, who's backed up by the goalkeeper, who's backed up by the back of his net. And that's the reality of it. And so you've got to be strong-minded. And the one thing I've learned through my career as a goalkeeper is the realization that if you're not strong-minded, this can come back to hurt you. And I've always said to myself, football is a team sport until the goalkeeper makes a mistake. And that's the reality of it. And that's why you've got to be mentally in tune and mentally tough. And for me, it's a case of keeping that in the back of my mind as well. And I was faced with that kind of approach, and an example of that I'll give you. For example, back in 1992, I got my very first call up to the Bafana national team. Just coming through the ranks and getting that call up. And between 1992 and 1995, I got regular call ups for regular games that were announced, but I only got my first cap for the team in 1995. So that's 3 years that I sat on the bench to. Wow. And you mentioned some great names there, Riaz. I think you mentioned them as well. There was Mark Anderson, there was Roger de Sá, Wade Duplessis was another one, Steve Crowley was another one. All great goalkeepers, and I literally sat as a number 2 to them on the bench for the entire 3 years of that stay there, thinking that this is never going to come. I was on the verge of giving up national team football. And then, of course, the legendary Clive Barker says to me at halftime of a game, against Zambia in the Four Nations trophy. We 2-0 down against Zambia, and he says, halftime, on you go. And then you just operate on adrenaline. And for me, where the strength of mind comes in is you waited so long for your opportunity, don't give it up easily. Go out there and just take it and grab it and run with it. And because I had that about me, that's exactly what I did. And the timing was great because it took me from that into some wonderful friendlies, into the Nations Cup in 1996. And it gave me the opportunity to be a part of history, physically be a part of history. But it was all down to, when I look at that 1996 winning Nations Cup team, and I go play for play, and I take that and I put it against any current Bafana team, and I would have to say that any current Bafana team will beat that team hands down for technical skill and ability. But the thing that got us over the line was the mental strength and toughness back then, and that's something that we've never really had. And of course, that 1996 time in the Nations Cup gave every single player a platform to go on to bigger things in European football, and I was no different. So the game has been good. The game has taken me around the world. It's given me opportunities that you can only dream of. And then of course I remember 1998, I was over at Fulham, and Philip Truzier came across to London to come and see me because I was carrying an injury at the time, and he came over to see me and just to have a chat about my injury and that, and I was pretty much recovered. And he said, look, your experience with the national team is vital going into the 98 World Cup in France. I want to bring you into the squad. And I was delighted with that, because to go from an African stage into a world stage, it's every footballer's dream. And that gave me gave me that opportunity. And of course, taking that over to it, and I was delighted and looking forward to it. And I kid you not, as much as you're faced with the ups, you've got to understand that the downs will hurt you. It will test you, and it did just that in 1998, as you asked as well. I remember 98. We were in a group with France, Saudi Arabia, and we had Denmark as well in our group. And it was literally one day before our opening game against the host France, where I kid you not, positions were up for grabs. Players were just giving Philippe Trougier headaches in terms of selections. And I remember on the training ground. One of our training drills, a cross came in, and one of the strikers had a shot at goal, and I was going one way, and my knee was turning the other way, and I knew as I did it, I knew it was gone, and I ended up having an operation right there in our home sort of city in Vichy. I had the operation, and I stayed with the team throughout the campaign, did my rehab there. But I remember my first thought, I was absolutely gutted. Because everyone wants to be available to play in the World Cup. And to answer your question, I remember my very first thought was the 2002 World Cup. That was my very first thought, and that was in 98. And I'm thinking, that's where I'm aiming for. And it started with my rehab in 98.
Okay.
And of course, fast forward to 2002, I got the honor of being the number one goalkeeper in the national team. And of course, Joe Musona was our coach then, and he had full faith in me. And it was nice. It was nice because, it's sort of a validation as to what you put your mind to and work hard for, and you follow the process, and it's great when you eventually get there.
Absolutely. And what an achievement from your side.
Yeah, it was. And then of course we went into the 2002 World Cup, and we've got Spain in our group, and you go Spain in your group. Oh, that's like that's the world's best. That's your yardstick. That's what that's what you come up against, and that's what you test yourself with. And I remember we had Paraguay also as well that we came, but and then disaster struck for me in the game against Spain, and I tell you what, and you guys, I'm sure you guys remember it. I'm faced with a one-on-one. I'm faced with a one-on-one with Raul, and funny enough, it's given me some life lessons because I've built a talk around that game, that mistake, that error.
Okay.
And it's a talk that I gear towards young kids, and I've linked it to business as well, because it all centers around the team environment. And all of us at some stage in our lives, we work in a team environment. But
Yeah.
it's understanding our roles in that team environment that's important. And if we grasp that, that helps you certainly improve your role as an individual as well. But I remember it clear as daylight, ball coming through, and out I came to close down the angles. And of course, pretty much went on to say, there you go, mate, it's all yours. And you know what? I kid you not, I must have watched that clip over 1,000,000 times. And
Wow.
1,000,000 times I've saved that goal. 1,000,000 times I've saved that goal. But hindsight, that's what it is, And you think about, if I'd done this differently, if I was focusing a bit more on that, if I wasn't distracted by a potential offside flag as he came through, that's the type of questions you ask, And to this day, I still get the odd tweet reminding me about it, and this was 18 years ago. But it's good, it's healthy, and I keep saying to people, it's. I was gutted by it, but I was never consumed by it. Because if I allowed myself to be consumed by it, I would have retired the day after I've made that mistake. So
Exactly. And thanks, Andre. We can hear the passion in your voice of how you feel and what your journey was about, and I appreciate the way you answered the questions. But I've got an easy question for you. Are you ready?
Yes.
You are one of South Africa's best goalkeepers, arguably the best. What are your thoughts on the top 3 modern day goalkeepers, and how do they compare to the greats of the past, or when you started your career?
Excellent question. When you talk about the top 3 modern day goalkeepers, I think to everyone that's probably a matter of opinion, because we all like who we like. But let me give you one example of a modern day goalkeeper versus the thing of the past.
Yeah.
Let's take the 2 German greats. Manuel Neuer, for me, is a typical example of the modern day goalkeeper. He's got 2 fantastic feet. He's pretty much a sweeper keeper, and that's the modern day football. He's capable of playing out the back with both feet. That's a modern day goalkeeper, because a lot of coaches are gearing towards, when the goalkeeper's in possession, you got your 2 centre backs who split and spread, and you got your full backs who go high up the pitch. And if they close them down, you can clip them into your full backs who's high up the pitch, play off the second ball, start your build-ups, that type of thing. You've got a modern day goalkeeper who also in possession can volley them to your strikers, and you push the defense higher up the pitch. So those are your modern day goalkeepers. The focus is more of making top class saves, one-on-ones, dealing with those things, but rather more becoming an extra player when the team's in possession of the football. So from that perspective, that's your modern day goalkeeper, and he epitomizes that. Take the other German great, Oliver Kahn, for example. He was your big, imposing goalkeeper, difficult, pure shot stopper. When he's in possession of the ball, he takes his time. He'll put the ball down, and he'll shift up the entire team, and you'll just knock it up there, and they'll win and they'll scrap and play off the second balls. So that for me is an example of your modern day goalkeeper versus that era of the game. But when I look at the goalkeeper of the past, they're the ones who were fearless in terms of catching crosses, for example. They would come and command their areas when they have to deal with attacks on the opposition attacks against them. Those are the ones that stand out for me. You'll find that a lot of modern day goalkeepers don't like to do that. They prefer the defenders to deal with crosses. They prefer to be line goalkeepers, if you like. And so I always say to my goalkeepers, if you're going to come and catch, if you're going to come and help the team, do it in a commanding fashion. Because when your teammates are seeing you catching balls at the far post, they will love you for it. They will respect you. They will feel confident in you. And so that for me is one of the key components of being a goalkeeper, whether it's a modern day goalkeeper or a thing of the past. But I think that for me is the biggest difference when you look at how the game has evolved. It's not that goalkeeping's evolved; it's the game that's evolved. And when coaches now look for goalkeepers, they look for goalkeepers who fit that bill. I look at a team, for example, like Manchester City when Joe Hart was there. And first thing when Pep came in, Joe, and this was the England goalkeeper we're talking about at the time.
Yeah.
And when Pep came in, Joe Hart was on his bike.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, what is he doing? This is the England goalkeeper. And then of course Edison comes in, and I see what he wants from a goalkeeper, and I'm going, okay, now here's a top manager, because he knows how he wants to play. Immediately he's identified that Joe Hart doesn't have the kind of feet on the ball that he's looking for.
Yeah.
And he needs to replace that. And he's done well with someone like Edison.
It is true.
Now, so just to touch on your club career, I mean, when we look back, you've played under some illustrious coaches who are absolute legends in South African football. When I started watching football at Cape Town Spurs, you had Mitch de Avery. You played for Gordon Egerson. You mentioned earlier the iconic, legendary Clive Barker. You played under Gavin Hunter as well. These are all top coaching names in South African folklore. What sets all these coaches and their personalities apart? And I'm going to put you a bit on the chopping block here and ask you, who's your personal favorite that you've had the opportunity to work with?
Great question again. I mean, that is just, and you are putting me on the spot because they're all legendary coaches in their own right. But I'm going to be as honest with you as I can, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of a light-hearted, funny story that happened to me towards the end of my career. Let me quickly start off with coach number one, who played a massive role in my career. And we always look to the ones who start us off, don't we? The ones who give us that opportunity, to come out of the darkness and into the spotlight, if you like. And that guy, I don't remember a coach called Sergio dos Santos. He was my very first coach. In fact, I worked with him at Vasco da Gama in Cape Town when we were an amateur side, and it was at the time where there was a group of Portuguese businessmen who were in the process of acquiring the status of Cape Town Spurs back in the day. Okay. And they brought Sergio over to take over the pro side. And Sergio brought me across initially from at the amateur ranks across there. Okay. And at the time I was a skinny young bugger, if you like, and a lot of people thought, he's too skinny, he's not going to make it in the pro ranks. Yeah. And Sergio saw past that. He saw ability. And he saw the process of nurturing me to the level that he wanted, and that for me will always be in the mind and the heart, because it's the one thing that sort of set me off on that path. But I think, just to cut a long story short, I'm then progressing through the ranks, and of course we look at how Cape Town Spurs started to build a team that could win championships. And then, as you mentioned, there was just one thing missing, and then that thing was Mr. Ebrahim, just to take us to the next level. And of course, in 1994, I remember us winning the old NSL, then only to be for it to be taken away by a boardroom decision. I won't mention who by, and we didn't win the league. And that was an inspiration to go into 1995. Where we won a league and cup double with Mr. Ebrahim, but with a great Cape Town Spurs side that he'd actually molded and put together at the time. And that period was a defining period in my career personally, because my performances then led me into national team selection and put me in the shop window there. And from a timing perspective, it led me to start linking up with Clive Barker, who had taken over the national team, and we wanted to build that whole thing. And when you look at the fact that we shouldn't have hosted the Nations Cup in 1996, because it was Kenya who pulled that at the time. They were the actual hosts of the tournament, and we were just climbing back into world football, and CAF said, hey, you guys want to host this? And we obviously grabbed the opportunity, and that was a stepping stone for us. Going into those levels, and of course, it led me to work with Clive Barker, and those things, those performances. Then, as I said before, it gave me the pathway through into Europe. I remember after 1996, I was selected to play in a FIFA All Stars team, and we were playing against an Asian 11. It was a time where Hong Kong was under the British rule and they were handing over the country to Hong Kong at the time, and the game was in Hong Kong. And I remember getting a call from my agent saying, "Listen, your career's taken a path now, and I got a call from Fulham, and they want you to come over and actually sign a contract." And it's sort of everything was sort of falling into place at that particular stage. And I remember flying across to London straight from Hong Kong, and I remember that actual morning I was in my hotel room in London. And I was just about to leave the hotel room and go across to Craven Cottage to sign the contract for Fulham. And I kid you not, I get this call in my hotel room, and the person on the other line says, "Is that Andre?" I said, "Yeah, that's easy." He says, "Well, this is Harry Redknapp from West Ham." And I sort of got the phone in my hand, and I look at the phone again, and I'm going, "Yeah, right. Mate, sorry, who's taking the piss here with me? It's not." He says, "No, it is." And then we got talking, and he asked me what was happening with Fulham, and I said, "Look, I'm actually on my way to go and sign a contract." He says, "Look, I'd love you to come to the club, but I can't offer you a contract right away. I need to have a look at you, because at the time he had Shaka Hislop, who was his goalkeeper. He's not his number one goalkeeper, and Shaka was also winding down." And I had to make such a hard and fast decision, and I had to be honest with him in the end, because it's a matter of integrity and commitment and that sort of thing. And I said to him, "Look, I said, let me go and do this. Let me go and sign the contract. Give you an opportunity to keep an eye on me as well, while we're there, and let me pledge my immediate future to Fulham." And he agreed with that, and he was very, very supportive of that type of thing as well. And so I ended up, I ended up that day on the sports floor in Harrods in London with Mohammed Al Fayed, and we were signing the contract together. I've still got a photograph somewhere.
Wow.
And we were signing the contract together on the sports floor of Harrods. So that's where the game had taken me. And if I fast forward a little bit, I then got a call about 3 or 4 years later from Ghulam Ali, who from Santos Football Club in Cape Town. And he had taken the initiative and said to me, "Listen, if you're thinking about coming back, you're coming straight to my club." And that was nice because I felt that sort of come back home kind of thing and, keep going here. And I said to him, "Well, who's your coach?" And he said to me, "Clive Barker." And I said, "I'll be there. I'll be there." No hesitation. And so I linked up with Clive Barker again and, for a little while, albeit, went on to win a league title at Santos with Gordon Egersund, and then when I left there, I went on to Mamelodi Sundowns and managed to win a league title there with Neil Tovey. And then, of course, as you said, ended up with Gavin Hunt, and we won a double together, Gavin Hunt and I at SuperSport United. So there were some great coaches that I had the pleasure to work with and work alongside. But I got to tell you how I believe how my career had come full circle, because I retired from the game in 2009 after winning the league title with SuperSport United, and I felt like, and I kid you not, guys, the decision to retire is probably one of the most difficult decisions that a footballer will ever make in his entire career, because you always feel like you're not ready. But subconsciously, you've got to do it at some stage. And, when I did that, I sort of took the step into coaching. And I ended up at Bidvest Wits with one of my first coaching stints. And I was working with Antonio Habas, who was once the Sundowns coach, Spanish guy. And for some reason, halfway through the season, it wasn't working, and he and the club had come to a mutual agreement that but they'd finish off together. And my CEO at the time at Wits said to me, "Well, who are we going to get?" And then, of course, you know who I was going to say. There was only going to be one name that I'd given him, and that was Clive Barker. And he went and fetched Clive Barker, and I was head of goalkeeping at Bidvest Wits at the time. And the first thing when Clive Barker came in, he said to my CEO, he wants me as his assistant. And I said, "Fantastic, no problem." But I kid you not, guys, I don't know if you know this, with about 4 games to go to the end of that season, by which stage I had amassed a goalkeeping department of about 4 goalkeepers. And I kid you not, like a freak of nature, they all started going down one by one. Now, bear in mind, I consider myself very, very lucky and very, very blessed to have officially retired from professional football at the age of 42. And
Wow.
and by the time it got to this stage, working with Clive and coaching, I was 45 years old. And I remember I had Jackson Mabukwani as part of my goalkeeping squad. I had Ryan Harrison. I had Emil Baron, and Stephen Hoffman. Those were my four first team goalkeepers. And then I had a 16-year-old called Jethro Barr. And I kid you not, one by one they went down. It was a busted knee, shoulder that popped, that forced him out. And my very last one was Emil Baron. I remember I was on the bench with Clive when we were playing against Orlando Pirates. And in the 91st minute, Emil went down with a broken leg. And there were 4 minutes remaining in the game, extra time. And I had to send on Jethro Barr, who's my 16-year-old goalkeeper, who's just come through the academy ranks. And Shane, he conceded in that game, and we lost the game 1-0. So you're looking at a 16-year-old whose head is gone.
Yeah.
So we get to training the next day, and Clive Barker says to me, listen, our goalkeeping situation is in a crazy position. He says, what do you think? So I know where he's going. And I say to him, listen, don't drag me into this decision. You make the decision, and I'll support you. And he said to me, fine, you're playing in the next game. And I'm going, damn it. I knew it was coming. And I remember this clearly. Our next game was against Tuks, who were in the league at the time. And we're going to this game. I hadn't trained for 3 years properly. I'm 45 years old, and I clearly remember going to this game. Please, whatever happened, do not concede one through the legs. That's all I want to do is not concede one through the legs. At 45 years old, I do not want to be doing that. And we ended up winning the game 2-1. And the goal that was scored against me was a free kick from outside the box by a young Aubrey Ngoma back then. Aubrey's now with Mamelodi Sundowns. And it was a free kick that hit the top corner. But I tell you what, that was the very first time I celebrated a goal against me, only because it wasn't through the legs. Top corner, thank you, I'll take that. And so it came full circle. I played for Clive, I coached alongside him. And that was just crazy. It's given me an unwanted record, by the way, in professional football, that I've become the oldest player ever to play professionally. So, well, there you go.
That's absolutely amazing. What an amazing story, Andre. It gets me thinking about South African sports. If we look at the rugby and where South African rugby is, the team is always competing at the very top level, and same could be said about cricket as well. And that brings me to South African football. My question is, what in your opinion is preventing South African football from becoming world class? Because we have the infrastructure here, we have we do have the facilities. There's no doubt we have the talent. So what in your opinion do you think we need to get to that next level?
I tell you what, you guys are asking some seriously top class questions. But these are relevant. These are absolutely top-class relevant questions. Now, you touched on a few things there. You spoke about talent. We have that in abundance because I see it all the time. I do a lot of work at the SuperSport United academy structures as well. And I see it. In abundance, we have the talent. My question is this. Do we really have the facilities? This is my question. Now, when we talk about facilities, they're beautiful stadiums that we built around the World Cup. Great facilities, if that's what we're saying. But there are two main factors that is influencing. Actually, three main factors that is influencing the state of our football. Since going back. Now, when I look at the '96 squad and the achievements that we were able to bring for the nation, perhaps it's our fault to start with, because perhaps we created this myth that you don't need to focus on the word development, because we were a ready-made bunch of players with a bit of steel about us, and we gone and we captured the Africa's major trophy, and so there was no need for development. we would just operate on raw talent. Well, that's where we shot ourselves in the foot first and foremost, because it was never going to be the case. Never going to be the case. Now, when you look at the process we followed down the road and to where we are now, the other two things that are missing for me is top class development coaches. Forget about professional coaches that run first teams, that run PSL teams. Top class development coaches, because we need to decrease the numbers coach per player. Right now, when you look at Spain, for example, that is a country that, and the figures may have changed up to now, but you're looking at one top class development coach, academy coach in Spain, to about 300 kids, quality kids I'm talking about. At the moment here, you've probably got one top class coach to about 5,000 kids. You're going to have kids falling through the cracks. You're going to have kids falling through the cracks, and I see it all the time. And so that for me is step number one: develop more top class. You'll find that some of your best coaches in world football are your academy coaches. Those are the ones that are the key to your young developing talents. It's easy for the professional first team coaches because they're already developed. Those coaches then just have to put them into playing philosophies, formations, all of those things. So that's step number one.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you seeing the commitment in the players, not only from the coaching level, but from the players themselves? Are they putting extra effort in? You know, we talk about the likes of Ronaldo and Messi. We know Ronaldo is a hard-working individual.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of articles talking about, you know, after training, you'd be, whether it be storming, you'd be packaging for 2 extra hours.
Yeah.
But I'm just using that as an example. Is there commitment from the players?
Okay, so that very good question again, because that leads me to issue number 4, if you like. Okay. So that's the one thing we've got to fix: the development structures of the game. Secondly, we need to start establishing at least one province elite development centers for these young kids, where these centers are manned by instructors of the game, for example. So you're taking them from a certain level to a higher level, where they're working with the elite group of players from different areas. So you take them out of an environment where they're working with some good talent, some mediocre talent, some not so good talent. We need to keep them on the same level as your top talents in South African football. So you need those elite centers where they live, train, eat, sleep football, for example. That's what you need. Now, because we don't have that, and we haven't had that brings me back to your question about the players who go on to become professional footballers. We have a philosophy at our club, for example, where we encourage. I always believe that when you're running training sessions in a team environment, individual players only get about 10 to 15 minutes out of that session of 1.5, 2 hours of what they need to work on to improve their own game. They get the rest, which for me only equates to about 30% of their development. They get the rest of that 70%, they will get in the extra 20, 30 minutes they spend on their individual training after a training session. That's where so we encourage that. And I don't believe as a whole in South African football, players pay enough attention to that.
Okay.
That mindset needs to change for me, because that's the mindset that gets you, and you'll find it. All you need to do is have a look at the philosophy and the mindset of a local player as opposed to a Ronaldo or a Messi or one of those. And that's the big difference. That for me is the big difference. That's the defining moment that takes a player from one level to the next level. And you're spot on with that assessment.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Andre, we also touched on a very key point, and that's being, mindset, determination, a player's commitment, and willingness to get to the next level. Of course, every South African footballer has dreams of playing in Europe. As you mentioned, you once had a dream as well. You played, as you mentioned, for Fulham. You played for Oxford. You discussed how those moves came about, but what are some of the challenges are facing players when they leave South African shores and actually go into Europe?
Yeah, good question. So, and I think culture is one of the biggest challenges that we face, especially from local footballers dealing with different cultures, different environments. You got to remember the one thing I discovered very very quickly on my journey across to the UK and particularly to Fulham. As a foreign player, trust me, you don't just walk into any team. You've got to earn your respect from your teammates and from your coaching staff and from the fans, most notably, with your attitude, with your ability, with your willingness to learn, with your willingness to go the extra mile. Fans love that, and they're very very quick to pick up on that. And it's being able to adjust to all those components, especially when you're going to a country. For example, let's say you're from South Africa and you go to a European country. Weather conditions is another thing that you've got to deal with very 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 quickly. It's cold, it's wet, it's rainy. You've got to play in the snow sometimes. So if you are strong mentally, and I always feel that you've got to be willing to accept guidance. For example, and I remember when I went across to Fulham, it was a time where Mohamed Al Fayed had just taken over the club, and in a matter of seconds, a matter of days really, he brought in Ray Wilkins and Kevin Keegan to the manager and head coach of the club, and Kevin Keegan sat me down and he took me through that process, and he helped me, guided me in terms of what I needed to do mentally, physically, ability-wise, all of those things in order to make it over there. And I tell you what, it wasn't easy. It was not easy, but it made me strong as a person. It made me strong as a goalkeeper and a footballer. And I believe to a large extent that period over there gave me longevity in my career. And so you've got to be willing to grab those things and embrace it and run with it.
Andre, this is more towards the light-hearted questions, specifically for a goalkeeper. But recently, the prestigious Ballon d'Or award made headlines for it not being available or will not be awarded this season. Okay, would you think deserved it, particularly this season? And from a goalkeeper perspective, what does it take, or what will it take for a goalkeeper to win it in the future?
I think that we are not going to easily see goalkeepers winning the Ballon d'Or. It's as simple as that. It's not a glamorous position. It's not. It's not something that people remember over and above an exciting midfielder who scores 20 goals a season, or a Messi or a Ronaldo who scores 45 goals in a season. It's the flair. It's the flair that grabs the headlines when it comes to the voting and that type of thing. So for me, listen, and I'm okay with that, because I always say, and you guys have heard the same before, where they say strikers win games and goalkeepers win league titles, and it's always going to be that case. It's always going to be that way, and so I think a goalkeeper has got only time a goalkeeper's got a chance if he doesn't concede one goal in an entire season, and that type of thing. It's what people choose to remember. And like I said, when it comes to goalkeeping, it's the goal against Spain that they remember 18 years into the future. And I kid you not, I had some guy who was giving me crap about it still now the day, and I said to him, I hear you, but if you Google 10 best saves of the 2002 World Cup, you'll find me in the top 10 there. So do that. It's that type of thing. It's that type of thing. And that's the one they remember. When Messi misses one in the 6-yard area, but he scores 2 belters from outside the box in the same game. Those are the ones they remember, and that's how it is. What I will say is, just from a to answer your question about who's probably, I think, most deserving of it.
Yeah.
We won't tell the Man United fans though.
Of course.
Yeah, for me, it's got to be Big Virgil, and the role that he's played for Liverpool in that defence alone. That must, But again, it's not a glamorous position, so unfortunately, that's how it is. So yeah.
Andre, I'm going to
Spot
respectfully
on, Andre.
disagree with
Spot
you
on.
here, but
Riaz, I can see you dying to say something.
we're going to sit here till tomorrow morning, so we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, Andre, from my side, just quickly, I mean, how has life been? If you compare your time at SuperSport versus your time as a player, I mean, how has that been? If you compare the two, your time at SuperSport United versus your time as a player, and how is your time as an analyst for SuperSport? I mean, now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when I go further back into my career, I was blessed to travel. The game's taken me to many different parts of the world, and then coming back to South Africa again, and then applying that knowledge that I've learned across there, and it stood me in good stead from a playing to a coaching level of the game as well. And the weirdest feeling that I've gotten through all my 19 years of professional experience as a player, the weirdest, craziest feeling that I got, and something that hit me the hardest in the game of football, is the day I retired and went to coaching. That's the day I realized, bloody hell, the game's no longer in my own hands. And so you develop coaching styles around that, where you work it through your players, and so those have all been learning curves for me. But and I remember when I started to do the presenting and analyzing of games in studio and that type of thing. I remember the words of Gary Bailey at the time when I started working with him in SuperSport. He said, "When you retire, what the analysis part of football in studio will bring you is, it will bring you two things. It will keep you relevant because people are no longer seeing you on the playing stage, that type of thing. But it will also enhance your coaching abilities." Because when I'm in studio and I'm analyzing games at halftime or post match or that type of thing, what I want to do is not just watch a game like a fan is watching the game at home, for example. When I'm analyzing certain parts of a game, so for example, Sadio Mane he's got the ball out wide, and he cuts inside and he crosses it, and whoever scores for Liverpool, for example, everybody's going, fantastic goal. I always like to take it back and go, well, what happened there? The defender let him inside, so his defending is all wrong, for example, that type of thing, and paint that picture for the fans, so that the fans also being educated when they're watching the game. And I've had people say, "Hey, I didn't see that," or "Good point. Now I can see." So it gives people a coaching perspective of the game, and it's enhanced my coaching abilities as well, because you literally get to coach the game as you go. Right, the defense should have done that differently, that type of thing. So the two is fitted in very nicely with me making that transition from player sort of to the coaching structures of the game.
Yeah, and it gives you the perspective of from sitting behind a table full of analysts compared to actually being on the pitch and working with players or being a player yourself. The perspective is completely different.
Yeah, it is very different, very, very different. Because it's now it becomes your role to how you want to handle situations on the playing fields, and you want to get your players to try and emulate that. But from a modern day perspective, for example, and you'll fit that into coaching drills, and you'll take those coaching drills into game situations. And that's why when the way the game has evolved, opposition video analysis has become a massive part of the game, because you have to analyze opposition so that you can give your own players a visual idea of how you want them to play.
Andre, I have to ask you this question. You being an ardent Liverpool fan, likewise. I mean, I'm also a Liverpool fan.
Did I mention you're a good man?
Thank you.
Look at Riaz.
Make sure that we get that on the recording. So
Riaz is going to hang up in a minute.
Yes, we can wrap it up.
We'll wrap it up, yeah.
So, if you know Imraan, if you know Imraan the way I know Imraan, I think you'll take your words back, Andre.
Brilliant.
Let's just keep it between us. Andre, I'll call you a South African scout in this case. That makes two of us.
Yes.
But let's talk about Liverpool, and this is the question for all the Liverpool fans. I mean, what an amazing achievement that that as Liverpool fans has experienced over the last 2 seasons, winning the Champions League, winning the Premier League after 30 years. Can you believe it? I can't believe it, but what can we expect for this upcoming season? And what positions do we need to look at, to take us to the next level and to maybe challenge at all fronts? Yeah.
I mean, I think what we need, and I'm sure Jurgen Klopp has got that covered. What we need is to keep the spine of the team going. The team needs continuity, for example. But the team, just like any team, whether it's Manchester United or whatever other team, you always constantly need to add in certain key areas, for example. And that for me is vital. I look at the work that our two fullbacks have put in this season.
Yeah.
Now, to expect them to go another season and do that is a tough old ask. They may be able to do it, or they may not. So those are the two areas that, first and foremost, I think Jurgen Klopp needs to attack and just add some meat to the bones there, and possibly in that midfield role as well. If he can hold on to our front three, for example, fantastic, and add just something as a cover going forward into the season. I think he would have done well. And of course, you've got to keep faith with the ones who've got you what you got, and believe that they can do it again this coming season. Not going to be as easy as it was last season. I can tell you that now, but that'll put them up for the challenge, no doubt about it.
The United fan, hopefully it's not as easy for you guys, and hopefully up to all the banter we've been getting from all our friends who are Liverpool fans this past season, and the United fan, a tough one. But we'll see what happens next season, and then
just give Ollie a big treasure chest full of euros or full of pounds, and let him just run wild and go and sign.
Full of penalties.
Sign Messi.
I think Andre. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to book you for another show, and then we can have a whole Liverpool United debate, and it can basically last until the next morning.
I would look forward to that. That sounds like a great plan, guys. Great plan.
Andre, just we basically close to wrapping up. The last part of the show is I'm just going to run you through a quiz as fast as you can.
Okay.
Andre, I'm just going to ask you about 5 questions as fast as you can answer them.
Cool.
Who was your closest friend in football?
Sean Bartlett.
The club you played for that's closest to your heart?
Oh, you're going to put me on the spot now. Really? Supersport United.
Okay.
The best player you've come up against in the world?
Against Jurgen Klinsmann. I also made the best save I've ever made in my entire career against Jurgen Klinsmann.
Wow. And the most debated question of all, Messi or Ronaldo, and what do you make of the social media frenzy about it at the moment?
I love the social media frenzy about those two because they are arguably the two best players in world football, and it's a great debate. But I've always gone with Ronaldo for the simple reason that he's done it at different clubs. That's why I've gone with Ronaldo. He's kept the same level. He's kept that same intensity. Messi is arguably a better footballer than him, but just the entire package where Ronaldo's concerned has done it for me. The way he's done it at the different clubs, his achievements, the way he just continues to play at the highest level. Some people might say, but it's easy to score 40 goals in the season at Barcelona every season. Is it easy to score 40 goals in the season for let's say Man United, a Juventus, a Real Madrid, for example. It's not, because it's different cultures. You've got to play under different formations, conditions, structures, all of those things, different players. That's why I've gone with Ronaldo.
Well, we've got Messi has an opportunity now to make a decision of changing his club, so we'll see where that goes.
Look forward to seeing that.
Definitely. Thank you, Andre. Over to you.
You've been absolutely fantastic. We thank you so much for giving of your generous time. We know that you guys have a very hectic schedule. The PSL is going on at the moment, so we feel indebted to you for giving up your time to come onto the show, being as gracious as you have been. Been an absolute honor from myself, from Sajid, from Imraan. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
To guys watching this video, of course, make sure that you subscribe to us on Twitter. Make sure that if you're on Instagram, that you are liking our videos at All Things Football. And if you're on Twitter as well, give us a like, give us a retweet. Andre, closing words from you.
Guys, I've got to tell you, I've loved every single minute of it. Only because I love chatting football. I love the passion of the game. And you guys have taken me down memory lane. We've talked all facets of the game, and it's just been absolutely brilliant. So the honor and the pleasure has been all mine. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.